Well, I think I'm going to start to give the ArtEvolve spiel, and then we will go into our topic for today. So welcome everybody, welcome to ArtEvolve. Some of you, have not seen me for a while, but my name is not hello@articheck.com. It is Mackenzie Garrity, and I'm the CCO of ArtEcheck. And I'm excited to be back with you for our ArtEvolves, which are now bi-weekly, so every other week. And just remember, we love interaction. Feel free to bring stuff up in the chat. We're going to be talking about, a lot of Doug's life story here. So if anything rings a bell or you remember any of it, feel free to jump in the panel. Just make sure that when you put anything in the chat, change it to all panelists and attendees so that everybody else can see your valuable comments too. Okay. And then of course, we're going to do a Q&A at the end. You're welcome to also kind of, add things in all throughout, but if you'd like to add a question to be asked or answered at the end, there's a little Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. So today's topic is a career of innovation in the art industry. And I have with me today, Doug Milford, Managing Partner of Art Systems. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So we'll go into much more detail soon, but will you just briefly introduce yourself and give everyone a little bit of a sneak peek into your background?
Sure. I'm the managing partner of Art Systems. Art Systems creates and maintains and supports gallery, our art management databases. Our clients are art galleries, art collectors, corporate and private, also art studios, artist studios and estates, and other art professionals. We help them integrate their and maintain their business or collection, all the information involved. And we also host websites for a lot of our clients and have a mobile app that integrates as well. We've been around since 1989. My partner founded the company. And I myself, originally from Winnetka, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago, and came to New York City to go to college in 1977. Been New York since then. I live upstate now in Woodstock, New York, for the past 10 years or so.
Wonderful. So we've brought Doug on today, not just to talk about his very interesting, life story in the art industry, but because we are unveiling a new API integration between ArtEcheck and Art Systems, which allows for users to create and access digital condition reports made in ArtEcheck on the Art System platform and make them from within Art Systems. So that's something that we're pretty excited about. And we'll, give you some info on how, if you're interested in that, how you can talk to us about it at the end.
We're very excited as well and look forward to the collaboration.
Yeah. So during our meetings, we actually got to talking about Doug's background. We were thinking about what topic we wanted to do for this event. And, we really realized that there are some amazing kind of key points throughout Doug's career that have been totally instrumental, and kind of give a view into innovation in the art industry at that point in time. And we thought it would be a great topic to align with our ArtEvolve objectives, which are, of course, thinking about old practices in new ways. There'll be a lot of that. Sharing advice from innovative pioneers. We have Doug with us today. And to inspire you to evolve your corner of the art world. So maybe we can use a little bit of history to inspire what we're doing today. So Doug, why don't you start at the beginning and share with us how you found your way into the art world?
Sure. I came to New York. I was familiar with New York because my sister and brother were in the theater on Broadway and also in film. And I had visited them as a kid. They're older than I am. And so I came to, when I went to college, I decided to go to Columbia and spend time with them. And also at the time in New York City, late 70s was a very kind of interesting and exciting time. The city was kind of run down, having issues, and had become nearly bankrupt in the mid 70s. But at that time, it started to recover, and there was lots of opportunity and lots of action in the music scene. And So it was a real interesting time to be in the city. Um, so yeah, so at college, I had my first project. I started to, and pretty much throughout my life, been inspired and really kind of compelled to begin projects, kind of grandish projects that require collaboration. Maybe in some cases just being a catalyst for them. And the first one was at Columbia. I published a magazine called Upstart, and we took on, a group of us took on this at Barnard, a literary magazine, small, called Paper Ladle, and we made it into an art magazine for the university.
Cool.
It included writing, poems, and fiction, and interviews with interesting people in the arts at the time. Early on, Keith Haring was one while he was still doing the subway drawings. An interview with Alan Vega of the iconic group Suicide, and a bunch of other kind of on the edge people at the time. We raised money doing concerts and around the campus, and film series. I think we showed the first John Waters film above 14th Street, Pink Flamingos, I guess we showed. And first time it was shown above 14th Street anyway. And we had a pretty cool staff too. Our editorial board included people like John Leland, who writes for the Times, Hilton Knowles, who writes for the New Yorker, Bernard Lennon, who founded Lennon Weinberg Gallery, who passed a long time ago, unfortunately, and Josh Mack, who ran Speroni Westwater for a while, and a bunch of other very creative people and accomplished people in the arts and other fields as well.
Wow,
So I just thought that was kind of fun.
You had quite the
Yeah.
crew going, even
Yes.
from university. That's very early.
Yeah. I mean, looking back on it, it was pretty cool time. So anyway, we had no, again, we had no experience. We kind of made it up as we went along. This is before computers, so it was all like standing around the light table with wax machine and doing paste up right there,
Wow.
as we went. So that's what Upstart was.
So tell me a little bit. You kind of had this initial, bloom into the art world while you were at Columbia, but you were studying English, right?
Yeah, I was an English major, but I also studied art history. I was in a graduate French course of Sylvain L'Étranger, structuralism and post-structuralism, and I took a study with Joseph Mashik, art history, and so that kind of fed my interest in art. My family wasn't really about the visual art; it was about the the members of my family were more into music and theater, and so this was kind of one thing I kind of went off on, and I didn't really have art in the home so much, but it was it was a creative family, certainly. And
so tell us how you fell into the gallery world.
So I was spending a lot of time commuting down to the Lower East Side, where the music scene was, the clubs, the CBGBs, Max's, and so on. And that's where most of my friends lived. That's a lot of creative activity was down Lower East Side. That's where the cheap rents were, where people could be creative and not have to hold down such a heavy day job to pay the rent as they do today, at least to live in the city. Rents, and so that's where it was. I mean, the housing stock was kind of the worst there. So that's the places that emptied out when New York City emptied out, and that's where available was. I mean, Soho was already locked up in the early 70s by the early baby boomers, these kind of mid baby boomers, as it were. This is kind of where they landed. And so I was going down there. I said, I don't want to live up on 110th Street anymore. I'm going to go down, find an apartment down there, and found I was looking at, my friend had a beautiful apartment on 20 Clinton Street. Well, apparently that's the only building in the area that was decent. But on the corner of Clinton and Stanton Streets, there was space where they were renovating, kind of doing a half-assed job renovating apartments, kind of renting them a little bit high rent, but I saw the storefront, and the storefront was seemed to be a decent deal. And I said, if you renovate the basement, so you know, it's livable, then I would rent it, and it was like $500 a month. And so I had a 1,700 square foot duplex for $500 a month there. But it was in the middle of what then was kind of the ground zero for heroin trade. They actually called the corner Mecca, because that's where you'd go to score. And the building was surrounded by shooting galleries and you know, where people would line up and excuse me, line up and outside and up the stairs to score heroin and use there. But
very
you know, there's also
very different ambiance than today.
Well, yeah, certainly it was extremely different back then. It was kind of the you know, buildings were collapsing. One collapsed right next to me, a fire on the building on the other side that burned it out. But there were people living, and there was a community in the neighborhood. I mean, there were people living there and working there, et cetera. But this was also going on in the area too. And you know, when I moved in, there was all syringes in the basement, et cetera. But you know, there we were, you know, the blonde kids from the Midwest, looking, you know, 5 years younger than their 23 years of age, you know, in the midst of this thing. But and we found out that other people were actually, well, we had the space, first of all, and what are we going to do with the space? I invited my friend Lisa McDonald, who I mentioned at the beginning was a old friend. We actually came to New York together as boyfriend and girlfriend. We were high school sweethearts, broke up, but then I invited her to become a part of this thing, and we tried to figure out what to do with the space, and we decided, you know, we'll do a bunch of different things. We had performances, we had dance performance, poetry readings, Dennis Cooper read there, concerts, Arthur Russell played at our gallery, and but then we also, you know, wanted to do art exhibitions, and everything was a lot of work. And we both had day jobs, so the art gallery part was kind of the easiest thing. Things are on the wall. We had no expectations and no experience, but we had a show, and suddenly we were deluged with artists in the neighborhood. You know, we didn't realize it was so packed full of visual artists, and we actually had an exhibition called 29 Artists in the Lower East Side, which I think was the first, like, you know, East Village show back then. But
it sounds like you were really listening to your community, right? So you had all these people coming to you and saying, you know, we need a space to put our art after you did your first show. And,
yeah. I mean, we weren't, you know, we were early on, and we didn't know what was going on or know any better. We didn't know that there was a group called Collab that was a group of artists that were doing projects together. We didn't really know about Club 57 or ABC No Rio. I mean, these were our communities that had been going on for a few years, and there were a couple other galleries as well that had opened. A Fun Gallery who showed Keith Haring and graffiti artists, and also I think had a show with Jean-Michel Basquiat, and who else was Gracie Mansion had opened, Nature Mort had opened, and New Math Gallery opened around pretty much around the same time of us. That was opened by friends that were in SVA. They dropped out of SVA to open the gallery.
So how were these galleries different from sort of the established elite in Soho?
Well, they were different mainly because they didn't know any better. They just opened it up and just wanted to do something, and this was a thing to do, and it was cheap to do it, and they had there was a community which kind of held them up and gave them energy, but also the people involved seemed to have a lot of flair personally. And you know, which is good for like promoting the brand I mean, I'm probably the one with the least amount of flair, except for maybe the Nature Mort guys.
I think you've got
And
flair.
well, all right, my own sort. I don't have the type of flair Patty Astor or Gracie Mansion has,
Sure.
or Nina Sagenfeld. That's right, or even my partner Lisa. So, but in any event, I had some ideas, and um, so how else are they different? The other difference is the names of the galleries. I mean, traditionally, you name your gallery after yourself. And but the time, I mean, Soho was pretty sclerotic. It wasn't really much going on there. I think the action was Mary Boone and maybe Holly Solomon, but we had gallery names, Civilian Warfare, Fun Gallery, Nature Mort, New Math Gallery, 51X, and Piezoelectric, which is our name. Piezoelectric actually means it's the kind of start on a stove or on a barbecue grill that click and gives off a spark. Its definition is exhibiting charges of electricity induced in a crystalline substance by the application of pressure. In other words, we're exhibiting this art, whatever it is, induced in a crystalline substance, the artist, by the application of pressure. In other words, you're going to have this show in a month. Nice work you have here. How would you like to show next month? And people would get it together, and they, because we were new, we didn't have, a lineup 2 years out. We were just throwing up, So we had some pretty great shows, and showed some good artists early on. Or Richard Hamilton's showed early on, Stephen Lack, and throughout we had other artists, Walter Robinson. We had a couple shows of. Kiki Smith had her first gallery show with us. So how are we different? What else? Yeah, so that's pretty much it. We didn't know any better. We were doing it on the cheap, and so we didn't know how hard it would be, and so it was just, and it was also a social scene that was really dynamic. It was fueled by openings go from one to the other. It was kind of more vodka fueled than wine and cheese and that sort of thing. And also there were it was a community, and it was all within that square mile. We all lived and played and worked in that square mile. Probably didn't go uptown, for months at a time. And there was a network of clubs, 8BC, Limbo Lounge, and also After Hours, and then there's the, of course, there was the Mud Club and so forth. But so it was all kind of a teeming network of people. It was kind of a real community that was friends with each other, and there was a lot of alcohol and drugs at the time, and this was also pre-AIDS, so there was all sorts of interaction at the time. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you told me, right, that the East Village at a certain point started to catch on and become really popular. So what happened at that point with Piezoelectric?
Yeah, well, the first 7 galleries, there was an article in the New York Times. Pardon me, there's an article in Art in America, and we were actually being visited by collectors coming down with limousines and buying work. We had no commercial expectations. We just thought, this was a thing, fun thing to do. And, we decided to quit our jobs. I worked all freelance, and I thought, well, maybe we can make a thing. If actually our expenses are such that if we sold $500 worth of work, we could make this go per month, and which sounds kind of ridiculous, but, we put up the space at the time. We just did it small, we tested it small, and we didn't overdo it. We just kind of built on our own little success, renovated succeeding galleries. But the first one had brick walls and window walls. So my brother was working at the time at a photo studio, and he brought home some rolls of seamless that we did sideways and made white walls on the brick. We just taped it up with duct tape. We clamped on the hardware lights onto the broken fluorescent fixtures. Pardon me, the lights from the hardware store, the clamp lights. And in front of the window walls, we hung photo backdrop, black curtains and from plumbing pipe and shower curtain hooks, and hung the paintings with the fishing line. And that was the gallery. I mean,
Which is
Then
now
we
the cool
moved.
thing to do, right?
Is it? Okay. Well, it's a smart in terms of if you don't want to spend money, and so that's what we did, and so that's how we could fund it to be so cheap. But as you know, as artists, tasted some success, and they wanted and deserved professional representation. You had to up your game a bit, and we found ourselves being art dealers, and no intention of doing so, but that's what we were, and we're kind of trapped in the career from then. So after the articles came out and there was business, that fall, I mean, time was really compressed back then. A lot happened in a very short time. That fall, a second wave of galleries started to open, another couple dozen or so. And they were mostly people with some sort of experience or certainly intention. They were some of the galleries that were more professional and more business-like and thoughtful in that sense.
Right.
That group of galleries included like PPOW, who's one of the most successful galleries now in many ways, and pretty much the only East Village, I think, the only East Village gallery left. And Pat Hearn Gallery, Colin DeLand, who actually took over the Clinton Street space. And then when we moved up to 6th Street, because once there was a whole more group of galleries, we were kind of off the path, because we were down below Houston. When there were 7 of them, people would make the whole loop. But once there was 30 of them, people just only could do so many, and so we were kind of left off the loop. But Colin took over my space on Clinton Street anyway, our space, and quickly found out that was the case. And so we had already moved to 6th Street, and he told me, and I found him a space with our landlord on 6th Street as well. So 6th Street was like, I think 8 or 9 galleries between them, between First Avenue and Avenue B at the time.
I feel like, when people think about commercial art institutions, I think a lot of people assume initially, right, that there's, so much competition that you're not really working with each other, but that's not really the case, is it? I mean,
well, there was a lot of competition. I mean, we had a lot of frenemies. So, I mean, like Gracie and I were like, at each other's throats for a while, but we ended up sharing a house in Hampton Bays.
Right. You can learn from each other, right? I mean, I think that's something we can take in terms
we were
of innovation.
Friends of the same. We were all, friends of the same friends, et cetera. And then they were the artists and so forth. So there was a lot of cross-pollination and a lot of support and, a lot of some moving from gallery to gallery. And there was a lot of intrigue and that sort of thing, like any tight group, but it was an exciting time in any event. But and then it's, it was, people started coming around and buying stuff. There was the early 80s, people were starting to make money. People at our peers started to make some money and started collecting. It wasn't just them, also the established and real connoisseur collectors of contemporary art, Schwartz's, Rubel's, and so forth, were buying art from the East Village. Charles Saatchi bought, a lot of work from us as well. So, there was that, but there was also new collectors starting out, that were in their 20s themselves. Some of them that are important collectors today got their start collecting in the East Village. And it was kind of open, it was fun. I mean, it was at the time, as I said, Soho was kind of closed down. Soho, there was like 3 or 4 galleries also that opened up branches of their Soho gallery in the East Village. And we actually went out to Venice, California. My sister lived at the time out in LA, and she there was a scene out there. So what we did was with my sister, she opened a gallery on the Speedway right in Venice, and down the road from LA Louvre, and she became piezoelectric out west. And so I was like back and forth in the plane when the fares were cheap, putting out fires one side or the other. And she showed some of our artists, and also showed artists like Lucia Perna and Dana Duff, artists that have made some renown, Chris Williams, and we showed, we showed some of them in New York. Dana Duff was very successful as an artist at that time. Now she's a filmmaker. So there was I think we were the first bi-coastal gallery, and yet we were just, doing
By the seat of your
gallery on the
pants.
cheap in East Village by the seat of our pants. Another opportunity that came up, basically, opportunities would come and you just have to kind of grab them and jump on them. It's just, and just go for it if as long as you're not overextending. Our people at Art Basel came to us and said, we'll give you a discounted booth in 1985, I think it was fair. They gave us a 6-meter booth for like $750. 6 meters that's 20 feet by 20 feet in the 1985 fair. And it was like, okay, so, but we can't afford, how are we going to afford to ship the work, et cetera? Well, the dollar was very strong then. So we took paintings off of stretchers and took a lot of paper pieces and rolled them on a tube, left the stretchers behind, and stapled up the paintings up on the walls, and just the canvases. And we stayed at the Three Kings Hotel, which is like the fanciest hotel there, and we were staying for $70 a night, and we ate over the river and the restaurant there on the balcony. I think it was $40 for a table for a party of 4, and we had a great time. And but the dollar was so strong, we just had to we discounted the prices. We lowered the prices by 40%, and still we figured if we just sell 2 paintings, we'll pay for it. And we did. We sold 2 paintings, and so
wow,
we had a great time. And that was our Basel experience in 1985. It's it's a different world, obviously. Now it's a different market. It's a different industry. It's really what it is. But that was what was there then, and you find what's available, and you work with that.
So what did you transition into after the gallery?
For piezoelectric, yeah, well, it got to be so kind of overrun at that point, and rents are going up, and there were spaces over in Soho, and that were better spaces, built better, and they weren't tenement buildings, they were loft buildings, and people were carving them up for galleries, and we got good deal, free rent to come over there. And my partner Lisa and I, we decided to open 2 galleries, because if you're having trouble making one nut, why not open 2? So we did that, and we in the same building, and we had that. But we opened in 1987 around I think I opened the same week as the stock market crash of 87 and lost an investor, and then another major collector died. So we had a difficulty getting going, but I kept the doors open and had some great shows over in Soho. But in 1990, when there was another stock market thing and the art world started to contract, I shut the doors. In 1987, they said that the auction market really wasn't affected so much, and it wasn't. But the market for emerging artists, where we were, really took a hit back then.
So what did you do when the doors closed?
I got sober and stopped smoking. Well, I stopped smoking a year later because doing both at the same time is too hard. And took a break and sold my Cindy Sherman film still and lived off that for the next year. So I was thinking about going back into advertising or something. I didn't really know. I was just basically kind of getting things together. It was, I was only an art dealer since I was an adult. And so, when you close down, it's like, what is my identity? What am I? That sort of thing. So eventually I transitioned. I got a job at a Marlboro gallery. And at Marlboro, I was in charge of the publications and the public relations and the writing the press releases and the advertising. And I had this idea that we were sending this stuff out to ad agencies, doing these tombstone ads that were nothing to do, it was just the name and that's it. And the catalogs, we'd sending them out to the printer, and they're charging for design, that sort of thing. I said, I had never touched a computer at this point, but I had the idea. It's like I could learn to do this. I had a design sense. I know about publishing. My father was a magazine publisher, and I know about printing. And so I suggested to the boss, Pierre Levet, I said, Pierre, we could bring all this stuff in-house, and I could get a Mac and learn how to use it, and I could design the catalogs and the ads and everything in-house. And he says, how much would this cost? And I said, well, it's about 10,000 with the training and all the equipment we need. I will not spend 10,000. I said, well, I'll save you $75,000 in the first year. He says, okay. So
that's all.
I saved him
that's the best argument you can make.
Yeah. So I saved him saved the gallery $125,000 the first year. I learned how to use a computer. And
what year was this? Just to put it into context.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I should do that.
Yeah.
That was 1992.
So yeah, very early in the concept of computer design, graphic design.
Yeah, I mean, people were doing that, in graphic, but not typically in galleries. And also, so bringing it in house allowed us to we opened up an ad agency in house, so we captured the 15% from the magazines. And we could just turn things around. I could just redesign them and design them, etc. And right there on the computer, and I learned how to use how to use a Mac, that sort of thing. I was 32 years old, 33 years old. I'd never touched a computer at that point, and now I have a software company, partner one software company anyway. And but in any event, so I got really kind of efficient doing these catalogs and the ads, etc. And it got kind of like I had kind of extra time. I was a little bit, bored. Anne
says that she loves these stories, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, Anne. So in 1995, there was this thing starting up. Everybody was on AOL at the time, and they had their own gated thing. But the World Wide Web was kind of starting, and I was like looking at that, and there was a company that, like a little startup called Artix, where they're starting to put galleries on, aggregate galleries. They had like a dozen galleries that signed up, and they made like little mini websites for them in one site. And so I said, this is cool. And actually, we published the first gallery URL in our ad in the New York Times. The first time there was a URL as part of an ad was for Marlboro in 1995. Cool. And so I had this idea. I had this inspiration, when I can't remember her name, but I was pitched by, she used to work at Art in America, but then was working for a company called ArtNet. And she was like pitching us to put the gallery on their gallery network, which was a spinoff from their auction results service, where you dial up with the modem, the old 28.8 baud modem, beep, 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 and you log into their database, and you'd wait for the images to download, and you'd be paying by the minute. And it was like, there weren't many subscribers for this service, but and it was really expensive too, because you pay by the minute, and it took so long. And we were talking about images over a 28.8 modem. And so anyway, I'm like, I thought about ArtNet, and I got to know them, and I had this idea to do a website for ArtNet. They weren't really, web oriented. They had this dial-up service for the auction results. And so I pitched this idea for a magazine. It was kind of more reviews, traditional art magazine, but also leaning into the internet, doing like bulletin boards and company information, and also bringing the galleries online thing to the web. And so I pitched it to the CEO, and they hired me, and to do this, and we brought in Walter Robinson to be the editor of the magazine, and we put it together. I mean, back then the web was such that I could do the coding. It was pretty straightforward.
So
right now it's.
Oh, I was just going to say it's interesting here because I don't think nobody really remembers ArtNet now for their auction, dial-up service, right? So in terms of
Oh yeah.
innovation, your first idea or your second idea or even your 10th idea may not end up being what works in the long run, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they had like, oh, this is so great, but they had like, I don't know, 10 subscribers or something and 20 employees, but
Right.
it wasn't really, it's like, how many people really care about this and are willing to, go through this process to find this information? On the web, it makes more sense, especially nowadays when things are faster. But at the time, they were keying in all the auction results, and they had, they are the only game in town. But so I brought this idea over, and they kind of like thought we were kind of like this cute web like thing, this website thing. We'll see how it goes, and but I was really pushing to bring the company onto the web. And so in the magazine, we started the magazine. Actually, here I found this. Can't really see it. Maybe because it's all zoomed out.
Yeah.
Let's see.
What is it?
Okay, it's a graph. It's yeah. The focus thing is not working, but it is a diagram of what I saw for ArtNet. This was part of my pitch. Anyway, so anyway, I wanted to see if I had this other thing. Yeah, so we were like the first online art magazine. It didn't, the only one that existed, the first one. This was 1995, 1996. We actually were named one of the top 100 websites in the world by PC Magazine in that year. And
Nice.
yeah, and then I really lobbied to put the galleries online thing off the dial-up and onto the web, and designed that, and did the pricing for that. But the next thing is like, okay, well, we've got these galleries online, but we have to key in everything like they've been doing for the auction results. They send stuff over, and we have to type everything in. It's like, why don't we hook up with these art management databases such as Gallery Systems or Art Systems, and we interviewed both of them, and so that we could they could send the data, and it can go directly in, send the images, and it can go directly into the database. But the CEO just didn't get it. But I mean, he also prided himself of not using his computer, so it kind of made sense. And I had a falling out with management there, and I had met these guys from Art Systems and liked them, and they offered me a position, to be a partner there if I could bring up the sales. And so I went over there to grow the company, and that was I don't know, 24 years ago.
Wow.
24, 30, 1997. I guess that's 24 years ago.
This has been the longest career gig in
yeah, I mean, most of this stuff, is the first part of my career. Once I came to Art Systems, I got married and had a family. But we did whatever innovation we did it within the company. My partner had David Studstill is his name, and he had founded Art Systems in 1989. He had worked for a company called ArtFile, but his first client was the Andy Warhol estate. It developed a software to manage all the cookie jars and all the artwork, all the things that he owned and collected.
That's
and
an
also his
undertaking.
artwork. Yeah, so he developed this for them, then kind of made it into a standard package, and a commercial package, and had some good clients. Also had the client list from ArtFile where he worked.
I feel like that's something that happens a lot for innovation, right? It tends to be that it's kind of championed by, for a very innovative thinking client, different new innovations, new things, particularly for software, right? I know that we do this. I'm sure that you do this too, but we have clients ask for things, right?
Right. That's the thing. I mean, clients ask for things. So that's how the innovation was initially directed, was our clients. I need this. I needed to do this, and we had some, we had experience in the art world but these were the leading galleries in international.
Yeah.
These are this business successes. There was standard practices, best practices that existed. So we built the software around those best practices.
Exactly.
And then, you know, what that means is then, you know, clients coming, they're either experienced and they say, okay, this is how it's supposed to be. That's great. I can use this tool to do what I do manually now, except more efficiently. Or if you're new, you're just opening an art gallery and you don't know anything about the business, but you know, for whatever reason, or if you're starting a collection, or if you're, you know, an artist starting to archive things. It's a system that teaches you. It's a system that teaches you what the best practices are, because they're all built in, and there are wizards that walk you through the things, you know. So it's a collaboration basically that with the clients. You know, after a while, you know, we get it. We have our own insights and we have our own inspiration, and we, you know, suggest things that other people didn't think of that, you know, make things better. So, you know, that's what it's been. I mean, David is the chief programmer, the chief architect, and does all the coding and heavy lifting along with his team. But he, you know, he had the company for 8 years when I joined in, and helped to grow it.
Yeah, and it kind of becomes also, I mean, with the software system that's working with so many different clients, like before when you were a part of like a gallery network in the East Village, right, and later in Soho, I feel like the same thing happens with software clients, where the software company acts as kind of a nexus for a network to be able to kind of exchange information and knowledge, right? Because you'll learn something from one gallery and be able to pass that on to another gallery or private collection that they can then use to their benefit.
Yeah, more kind of an intellectual thing. I mean, ultimately, all of this stuff and what drives innovation, or what is the energy in innovation, is integration, right? And so you either have you have a bunch of creative people, a Medici effect in one place, you know, that are you know, put together, and they come out with some great ideas because they all influence each other. You know, that's in the you know, East Village. You had all this excitement going on from there, and I think that, you know, drove a lot of the creative activity and inspiration. And in this case, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's you get ideas from here and there, and you systematize them, and they all benefit. So it's kind of a, you know, it's the efficiency of integration that ultimately is the purpose for these software. It's a relational database. You enter information, and everything is so integrated that you don't have to keep entering it. It just goes there and edits the related places, the related fields. When I was at Marlboro, I counted, you know, before we had a system like this, they use Art Systems, of course, at this point. But when I was there, I counted it, you know, because I wanted to get a system like this for Marlboro. They had their own stock system, but it was basic. And so I counted, it was 17 times that you'd enter a title of an artwork from the time you consigned it in and put it on the labels and the price lists and the you know, and the so forth. It was 17 times. With these databases, relational databases, it's one time, you know. And so now so that's the goal, is to make that efficient. And so for at this point in our collaborations with companies like Articheck, it allows us to extend our software beyond, you know, what we can handle, and work with partners. So the integration goes beyond just internally, but also goes out into the world with other systems, and you all can benefit from it, and we can benefit, and ultimately the clients can.
Exactly. So tying this into, you know, kind of the clients being the ones who drive this, I would recommend, you know, to anyone who's in the audience, if you're interested in working with a software and it's not doing something that you would like it to, or there's an integration that you want but doesn't exist, ask, right? Tell us, because that's something that really drives changes going forward, and additions. And I think that so often in the art world, sometimes people will feel like, oh, well, you know, because maybe this is something that happens more often with museums, but because they're working with things that don't change, right? Art that does not change for hundreds of years, sometimes that we get that mindset also for everything else. So we want to make sure that if we're talking about software, you should ask questions and, give feedback and stuff, because that's going to help to make a difference in your experience as a user of the software.
Certainly. We add things, we refine things all the time, and I've got a long list of feature requests, and we will kind of vote on them and decide which ones should have priority. And is this something that will serve the market, or is it something that's just kind of a one-off for this client? And if it helps the product, that'll take it to the top of the list. So we'll update the software, and now that we have a web-based software, it allows us to update it,
right,
at will, and everybody is running the same version. Back on the desktop software, or previous version, we'd have to update each client individually. I mean, yes, they would download the update and do it themselves, but often they had issues with their own computers, et cetera, and we'd have to support it. Now it's just automatically done, and everybody has the latest version. I look back on the last package, and people have old versions. We have people that are running our software from 1999 currently. I mean, they're not paying us any money at this point, but it still works.
Right.
Anyway. So
wow, from 1999.
Yeah.
Time to bring them onto the web. Come on, everybody.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, some people are afraid of it, but it makes sense. It makes sense, especially when you want to reach out to service providers and work more efficiently. I mean, it's what it is now.
Sure. So should we move into some question and answer? Actually, first, why don't we just quickly mention, if anyone is interested in the integration between ArtEcheck and Art Systems, we're going to do a more official announcement, I think slated, sometime in the next days, that will also have a video of how it works. So if you are, already work with ArtEcheck or already work with Art Systems, you can see how that kind of integration connects the two and how you can use it. And then if you're interested in learning more about it, then you can, contact Art Systems. How should they contact you, Doug?
You can email info@artsystems.com. Go to our website at artsystems.com. I just want to make a comment about our integration, which is one thing that's great and makes it stand apart, is that you select the works that you want to do the condition report on, multiple works, et cetera. You send them to your ArtEcheck place, site, whatever,
account,
and account. Thank you. And it's not just an export, but also it'll come back, and you'll be able to in Art Systems have the link to the report and other information about it, so that going forward in your Art Systems database, you can just click on the link and go directly to your report in ArtEcheck. So it's not just an export and you have to go look it up on ArtEcheck separately. So I think that's a real key thing that we're doing.
Definitely, they're very well intertwined, right? So that makes less steps. We don't want you to have to input the name of the artwork 17 times. That is
right, or twice even,
or twice, exactly. So and on the ArtEcheck end, if you have any questions about the condition reporting side of things, then feel free to reach out to us at hello@artecheck.com, or you can even reply to the emails that we send out about this webinar. So we have, let's see, I see one question in the Q&A. If anyone else has any questions or things to drop in, feel free to do so in the chat or in the Q&A section. William wants to ask you, within Art Systems, when an artwork is sold, does the file transfer to the new owner? That's interesting.
Oh, wait, it's under answered now. Okay. It's a similar, database for galleries. When an artwork is sold, does the file transfer to the new owner? Well, there's no file per se. It's a part of it's information within a database. I mean, it's an interesting question. In 1999, and we were talking about the software in 1999, I had this idea that I thought was going to revolutionize everything, where you create this thing, you can create this thing called a data kit that then, has the basic information about the artwork and also the image in a little file. and you could email that to some other user of Art Systems, and that's going to really do what you're saying here. And yeah, some people used it, but it wasn't really that that popular. So yeah, so no, that doesn't exist as it is. We are doing other API integrations where you can send the artwork to online art sales places, etc. But what you're talking about might be covered in what we're doing with VerisArt, which is authentication, blockchain authentication. All right, so that they could, when the work is sold, the title will transfer on the blockchain, or at least a certificate for the title. But in terms of file transfer, not so much. No, I mean, basically just a sec. The only information you want to convey to that buyer is pretty straightforward and basic. You'll have a lot more information about the artwork, but mostly that's proprietary and internal that you would have in the database.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Oh no, I was just going to say that it would be so nice if there were like a worldwide network of ways to transfer files for artworks and things across the sales and across loans and all sorts of things. We don't have that right now. The art world doesn't have that. But I will.
Yeah, that was my idea 20 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I will quickly bring up. Well, Doug, you should join AIS. So there's the Art Identification Standard is a group of different organizations that are kind of working together to potentially establish something like that with probably blockchain. But that's kind of on a wider level. That includes information, not just verification, but also all the different pieces of information that go into identifying an artwork over time. So I think it's, we're maybe some years down the line, William, but it could be coming. Could be something that's coming.
Yeah, I mean, they've been talking about that for a while now.
They have, yeah. So, I think it's a side project for a lot of companies, but it's something interesting that, we'll see more of hopefully soon. Eve says, how can I contact you, Doug? So I think that Doug already gave the email.
info@artsystems.com, yeah.
Yep. And then Lisa just wants to ask, because she said her internet dropped quickly. From your perspective, what goes into the innovative process? Is there a formula?
Well, I've actually done a bunch of thinking about that, and I try and pick it apart and analyze it, and I did a little reading as well. And one simple definition that I've read is that innovation is basically is the future delivered. It's kind of glib, but I see like 4 main stages to the process. There'd be like aspiration, inspiration, opportunity, and execution. Aspirations, like what is the subject? What is the space? What is the unmet need? What's the problem to be solved? That's what are you going for? And then inspiration is connecting things. Basically, creativity is connecting things, as Steve Jobs said, and a lot of other people said, I'm sure. Connecting disparate ideas, is kind of a metaphysical practice that can be a key source for information. Grab this thing and this thing that don't seem to match, but they do in this context, and that creates your thing. What is the opportunity? What is the space? What are the resources? What are your limitations? Limitations are key. I mean, the creativity, loves constraints. So really embrace the constraints. Like in the East Village, we had no money and we had this, but we had that, and so we'll do what we can with that. And then of course, then you have to go into the execution, the making, the experimenting, the testing, the implementation, and then the observation, and then refining the project.
Well, I think the network too. The ability to get information from other people, right? And other.
Yeah. I mean, that
feedback.
Yeah, if you have a more conceptual angle, innovation is kind of like you've got 3 main elements. You've got your ideas, the mind. You've got the physical arena, the stuff, including the digital stuff. And then you've got people, and you've got your team, and you've got whatever network you have, whatever a collaborative network you have, but also your team working with you directly. To take it further, what innovation does, it integrates kind of like the dual levels of reality that exist. Reality, like through energy, right? With energy being the movement of possibility to actuality, and the dual levels of reality, as I see it, like being the quantum, the timeless, like micro state, the here now, the present, which is the inspiration, just aha, it's like that's timeless. That's a momentary and timeless. It's not about the flowing of time so much. And yet you've got, and the other level of reality, you've got your physical reality, where the world you're living in, which is time-based, right? The macro state, the past, the present, and the future, the movement. Basically that's the execution. So you've got your inspiration and your execution. And integrating those is what makes it work. Because ultimately it's about integration, within your own mind, as a place for inspiration, integration of the mental and the physical, and then collaboration between people, as you mentioned, systems, also between systems working together, So
I like that integration, bringing in the integration part. Let's see, William said, I'm curious about your virtual coring program. Okay, William, Stacy, I think, is hanging out here. If you hear your name, Stace. She is one of our business development specialists, and she can reach out to you and give you some more info on that. Let's see, we are almost at the end of our time here. And I don't think I see any other questions. So I think we are, Stacy, you're writing just to us, the panel, by the way. I think we are probably just on time. So Doug, that was
I had
great.
one other.
Oh yeah,
thanks.
please.
I had one other thought. I think your webinars are supposed to have some kind of advice element as well. And I'm not usually one to give advice, but I'm also one that follows orders pretty well. For mine, here's mine anyway, for what it's worth, for new projects, is to get started with a new project, just like be humble, start small, try it out, get feedback, but grow organically, from your small successes. That's been my takeaway from my own successes and learning from my own failures as well. So anyway, for what it's worth, I wouldn't overreach when you start out unless unless it's totally makes sense to do so.
Yeah. Thanks, Doug. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to get the history and talk about innovation in the context of, everything from galleries in the East Village to Marlborough to art systems. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and we will see you, I think, in a couple weeks. We have Freeze coming up, and we have the NKF Congress in Sweden coming up, so we may be a couple weeks out before the next event, but we'll see you at the next one. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.